So we're now on Daf Nun Beis Amud Beis, and we're talking about the case of Shmuel Nekra Tzela Meikara Treifa. Kama Chisaron B'Shidra. Now, the Gemara says, Verminu, we have another statement of Shmuel in the context of a machlokas between Beis Hillel and Beit Shammai that seems to contradict his statement here. And the Gemara is assuming an analogy between the laws of Treifa and the laws of Tumas Ohel. So we're equating now the human body to the animal body. Kama chisar b'treifa, if a human body, a human corpse, is not whole, unfortunately part of it was missing, at some point it no longer could be metame with Tumas Ohel. Beit Shammai are mishtei chulios. Beit Shammai are machmir, and they say that if one vertebrae is missing, it still is metame. It's still considered a whole corpse. It's only when two vertebrae are missing. Then it's considered chisar b'shidra. Beis Hill, on the other hand, chulya achas. V'yomer Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, and now Shmuel is being quoted as said v'chein b'treifa. So Shmuel himself explicitly postulates or formulates this analogy between the laws of Tumas Ohel, which we read about in the parsha yesterday, and the laws of Treifa, which would mean that at what point, if there's a deficiency in the spinal column, does the animal become a Treifa? According to Beit Shammai, it's only if two vertebrae are missing. Beis Hill would say it's a Treifa l'chumra. Again, Beis Hill would makil in Tumas Oel, and therefore, ipso facto, they're going to be machmir in treifa, considered a treifa, if one vertebra is missing. Now, if you remove the vertebra, that means that two ribs are attached to it on both sides are removed as well. And according to Shmuel himself, if the removal of the vertebra that renders treifa, not the mere removal of the rib, we need to remove the vertebra. And yet Shmuel himself says, let's go back again to Amud Aleph, Nekrat Sela, one rib was uprooted, and it's already a treifa. Whereas by paskening like Beis Hillel in Olos, his underlying premise is that when is it considered chisar b'shidra? That's only if, just 1 second. No, that according to Beis Hillel, even if only one vertebrae is missing, that's called a chisar, and it's not metami tumas oel. So again, we're talking about chisar b'shidra, and Beis Hillel say chuliachas, which means that you removed the shidra, you removed the vertebra. Just 1 second. Just got to get the cheshbon again. According to Shmuel, in other words, by posketing like Beis Hillel, we see it's not enough that you have an uprooted rib to make the animal a treifa. You need a chisaron b'shidra, which is not the removal of the rib, but rather removal of the shidra, the vertebra. So the Gemara says that you can reconcile the two rulings of Shmuel. Hacha tsela below chulya, hasam chulya below tsela. When does Shmuel say that an uprooted rib, even though it was not an uprooted vertebra, it's treifa? That's called tsela below chulya. And tsela below chulya, according to Shmuel, is treifa. But now we reverse it to the case of chulya below tsela. Now, it's when do we accept Beis Hillel? In the case of a deficient spinal cord, chisar b'shidra, that's where the vertebrae is removed, but the rib is not removed. How do you remove the vertebrae without removing the rib? You got to be a magician for that.
Right.
Right? That's the Gemara's question.
The,
You could have such a thing as uprooting the rib and the vertebrae remains in place. But the vertebrae is missing, that holds on to the rib, and the rib is still attached. And it's not uprooted. How can it be attached if the vertebrae is missing? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so now we get a little bit of anatomy here, which I'm not very good at. And the Gemara says, Bishili kafle. So I have here a picture of it. And we're talking about kafli. Kafli are flanks. Let's just get the English translation here. And apparently on these flanks, you have vertebrae that don't have ribs. And therefore you could have a case of chulya below tsela because there are no ribs. He says here at the end of the flanks, he's got a picture of it here. There are many vertebrae that do not have ribs. Okay, what can I tell you? Then he says apparently it means they don't have true ribs. They only have bony protuberances. Okay, gave ace. Go figure it out. But the entire sugya that we're learning is based on one premise, and that is that the law of a corpse in terms of being metame oil is analogous to the law of treifa. Matzkif Rav Oshaya. Oshaya is going to question the very underlying premise of this whole sugya, namely that the machlokas regarding olos between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is relevant to the laws of treifa. V'lisnayu gabe kule Beis Shammai v'chubre Beis Hillel. Oh, if you're going to tell me that according to Beis Shammai there's only treifa if two vertebrae were uprooted, then it comes out that Beis Shammai are mekil, in contrast to Beis Hillel, who say that even one vertebrae missing is already a treifa. And we have a principle in Masechta Olos that is an entire list, an exhaustive list of all the cases where Beis Hillel, where Beit Shammai are Mekil. Why wasn't this case listed? Amalei Rava, Rava says to Rav Oshia, Ki itchal inyan tuma itchal. You're right. Beis Shammai have a kula by requiring two vertebrae to be uprooted in Hilchas Trefus, but the original issue was with regard to olos. That's what they were dealing with, tuvas mes. Beit Shammai are being machmir, and they're saying that in order to be mafkia tuma, in the case of a human corpse in an oil, you need to remove two vertebrae from the spinal column. And this leads us to a sugya called Gulgoles Shenechbisa Beruba. But I think we're going to have to leave that for another time. Let me just see. Yeah.
All right, shkoyach.
All right. We try to do the
Yeah.
best we can. A lot of trephis here.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard. I know it's hard. You have to know anatomy.
Yeah. I have a great week. Thank you so much.